Hello, my friends. Nick Libretti here for JR Cigars. As you can see, we are not in our normal studio. We are down in the heart of Bourbon Land in Bardstown, Kentucky, where, this is really where dreams come true. And we are at the amazing Bardstown Distillery to kind of announce a brand new collaboration and project, and also to see what these guys have been doing for the past 9 years, really taking over the bourbon world. And I'm joined by a very fascinating individual. Please welcome Dan Callaway. You're the Vice President of Product Development?
Yes, sir.
Nailed it. Always need to check that. I should have checked that again before. But Dan, thank you so much for joining us today and having us here. It's been an awesome experience.
Awesome. I'm so glad you're here. Our team is excited for this project and looking forward to talking about it.
Yeah, it's been in the works for quite a while, but we were happy we're finally able to kind of get it across the finish line. So what we're going to do today is, our fans out there, you guys know about cigars. We'll go over the filler, binder, and wrapper and where everything's made. But what I would like to do is show people why this is going to be such a good pairing with the Bardstown Origin Series, not just from a flavor perspective, but also the similarities in kind of how our industries operate from a manufacturing standpoint. Because getting the tour of the entire facility yesterday, we were able to really see between the fermenting and the aging and all this, how similar our products are. So before we even get into that, can you give us a little bit of history of Bardstown Distillery?
Sure. So we started Bardstown Bourbon Company in 2016. And, we could have built the distillery anywhere in the country. Right? But it was an intentional decision to come to Bardstown, Kentucky, where we are right now is the bourbon capital of the world. 11 distilleries within 16 miles.
Wow.
So we wanted to build our distillery surrounded by the history, but bring a modern take to the industry. Now, being modern is 3 core tenets for us. Innovation, collaboration, and transparency. You'll see that in everything we do. We're innovative, most technically advanced distillery in the country. We're collaborative for projects just like this. We love working with others, but most importantly, we're transparent. We show you exactly how we make the product.
Transparent, literally. There was the one warehouse that the entire front is glass, so you can see through. There's a lot of glass windows. You can kind of see into all the different rooms and everything. I have, I was a bourbon guy, and I'll be honest, until I started working on this project, I had kind of gotten out of bourbon right as you guys were on the come up. But everyone I've talked to, including people I've worked with and other people in the cigar industry who are big bourbon drinkers, I'll be like, hey, have you heard of Bardstown? I'm like, oh, Bardstown, they're unbelievable. These are the guys, these are the future. I also, I even mentioned it yesterday, find it really awesome that you guys got the trademark for Bardstown. I'm like, no one else thought to call their project Bardstown. So let's go through the process. And I know it might sound tedious, but like I said, our fans know we've had plenty of blenders and manufacturers and done factory tours. They know how a cigar is made. How is a bourbon made? Literally take us from picking out how you want to blend it to the finished product.
Yeah, awesome. So bourbon, like every major spirit, right, starts with what grows well locally.
Right.
So here in Kentucky, that's corn. So bourbon is always majority corn. Then you come to a fork in the road, and your secondary grain, you either pick spicy, vibrant rye or smooth wheat. And then you add a little bit of barley to help with the conversion in the process. So you start with your local grains. So they all come in, you grind them up, and you have kind of a fine powder. And then what you're going to do is take those grains, put them in a large container, add water, and heat it up. That's called the cook. So the first step is to cook your grains. And what that does is breaks down starches into fermentable sugar, because it takes sugar to make alcohol. So step 1, cook the grain, get a sugar-rich, think about a breakfast cereal.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna kind of do this in steps with you to kind of translate for the cigar people out there. So this would be the same as, after our tobacco grows, and also it's very similar. You grow the tobacco in the region that's better for that region. So certain regions, their soil is more adaptable for a richer kind of tobacco, like a spicier one wouldn't grow well or wouldn't come out well. So you start with your environment. It's the same thing. Then after you cut it, you take it to the curing barns where you're going to heat it up essentially, and that's where the tobacco goes from that green and all the chloroform or chlorophyll, I can't remember which one it is, kind of comes out. It turns to that brown color, and some of the sugars come out. Like if you have a Maduro, like a darker wrapper, the color starts coming out, and then after that, then it's on to fermentation, which I'm guessing is the next step after the cook. So it's heat, and then fermenting is, again, similar.
Exactly. So we've cooked it. That takes about 3 to 5 hours for the cook. Then you're going to take that liquid and transfer it to a new tank for fermentation, right? And fermentation, we're adding yeast to the mixture, and we're converting sugar into alcohol.
Yep.
So over the course, and you can vary, right? So we usually do about 72 hours because we need speed. Right. You can lengthen it to a week. What you're doing is taking a sugar-rich substance and converting it into essentially an 8% alcohol mixture.
So now when you say you do it in 72 hours, you know, some people do it for a week. Is there going to be a difference in flavor the longer you ferment it, or?
Essentially, you can get the same flavor. It's really a difference in yeast. Okay. So you're using kind of these high-powered active yeasts that can get to your end product. But flavor is derived from the type of yeast in a big way. Right. If you want to get spicy, if you want to get fruity, you can select different yeasts to get that done.
Interesting. Yeah. And then, as the cigar people know, the fermentation process, again, it's using a heat factor to extract the flavors and also get rid of a lot of the whereas you guys are kind of turning these starches and sugars into alcohol, we are kind of the fermentation is what makes it kind of a smokable product. So they put all the tobacco in these big piles, the pilones, and then through the heat and the pressure of these, I mean, sometimes they weigh hundreds of pounds, the tobacco begins to ferment. A lot of the impurities burn off, a lot of the things that are used in the growing process, then they'll turn them. For us, fermentation is, I want to say, minimum like 2 months, like 30 to 40 days, sometimes depends. So it's a little bit longer. But again, we have the heat for the curing process and then the fermenting. This is what's going to turn it into like an acceptable product, essentially. Like you don't want to smoke it just yet, but it's smokable. Interesting. Yeah. So I'm guessing after the fermentation, is it drinkable? It's just going to taste bad?
Sure. You've essentially made beer at that point, right? We just take it a step further, which makes it a distilled spirit. So yes, you can taste it before, breakfast cereal, after fermentation, it's a drinkable beer. Okay. Right? Then comes distillation. Distillation is just separation through heat. Okay. Alcohol is volatile. It evaporates at 173 degrees. Water at 212. So what you're doing is heating up the liquid in between the two evaporation points. Okay. So alcohol evaporates early, turns to a gas, rises up to the top. We separate the alcohol once it's evaporated, cool it back down, and you've got your moonshine. You've got your clear spirit. So you're just separating alcohol from the mixture through heat, and that's distillation.
So this might sound like a stupid question. That mixture after the alcohol has been separated, what is that now? Is it just garbage, or do you use it for something else?
We've got a lot of happy cows in Kentucky. Okay. That falls to the bottom of the still, and that mixture actually gets sent back to the local farms, and it's used for feed for cattle.
That's probably delicious cows. And so then after the distillation process, is that when it's barreled up?
Great question. Yes. So you've got now this clear spirit. Looks like water, right? You can call it new make, distillate, moonshine. It's in a large container. We test it in the lab, make sure it's up to standard. And from there...
You test it with like equipment or like with a couple of glasses?
Yeah, both. So everything, it's the balance of art and science,
right? Exactly.
Right? So you're nosing it, you're scoring it, but you're also running it through organoleptic machinery and seeing what you've really got.
Exactly.
And then from there, you add a little bit of water to take it down, and then you put it straight in a barrel. New charred oak, which is one of the most important pieces of the bourbon process. All the caramel, vanilla, baking spice comes from the fact that it's put in a new charred oak barrel, and the clear spirit ages in that barrel.
What's really interesting about bourbon, so bourbon and cigars, whiskey and cigars generally, there's obviously a lot of it is based on like a tradition, but then there's a lot of kind of new age innovations to kind of, make the process even smoother, even more efficient. But with bourbon, there are, to even call it bourbon, there are like these kind of legal regulations, like it has to be aged in a brand new barrel. It can't be. Cigars don't really have that, but that's interesting. Like the term bourbon is so protected
Absolutely. Well, it's America's spirit, you know, and so these, you know, has to be a product of the U.S.
Right.
Majority corn, the temperature off the still, the proof when you go into barrel. Sorry, not the temperature you go off the still. The proof you come off the still, you proof go into barrel. Most importantly, no additives.
Right.
So a lot of other spirits, you can add caramel coloring, you can add sugar. All natural.
So whatever you're tasting is like, this is what it is. This is, nothing else was added.
100%.
Very interesting.
Yep.
Do you guys buy wood and then make your own barrels? Do you buy the barrels like they come in like all ready to go? How does that work?
It's a great question. And, you know, depending on who you're talking to, about 60 to 70% of the flavor is derived from the barrel. So we work with about 5 different coopers all over the country, from Missouri, West Virginia, and we dial in different recipes for the oak. So it has to be new. That's the big regulation. It can't have already had a spirit in there. They're put together. The amount you char or toast the wood will dictate the flavor, and then they're sent here and filled.
Okay. I saw in the kind of, I guess it was first of all, the kind of barreling process was way more advanced than I guess I pictured. I pictured guys with like, you know, funnels and just pouring stuff in there. There's, you know, you had machines and they're coming, and then I saw the machine that like you put the kind of cork in the hole and the machine actually hammers it in. I was just imagining a bunch of old guys with hammers knocking it around like the old days.
Yeah.
And I did see that you guys recently set the world record for the barrel racing or the barrel course.
Yeah, that's the most hotly anticipated competition at Kentucky Bourbon Festival. Every distillery team will compete against one another to take a set of barrels, which weigh about 550 pounds, around a track. And the key thing is so interesting is being able to clock a barrel. So think about 53-gallon barrel, all the pressure. The bung, the opening, has to be at 12 o'clock.
Exactly.
At 12. Because if it's upside down, the pressure, it'll just leak over time. So you go back to check in 5 years, 6 years later, your barrel's empty.
Oh, yeah.
So the skill is to roll it into a rick where it's stored and clocking it. So if you know that you have to roll it 20 feet away, you start with the hole, say, facing you, and then it rolls.
So you know exactly how many rotations per feet is going to equal this thing standing straight up.
Exactly. And the team that can do that the quickest without the deductions wins. And then we've got, to your point, Giant Banner as the champion.
Yeah. So. Well, yeah, because it was even funny. I asked him, Jake, yesterday. I'm like, "Did you guys have like a rival, like a real team?" He's like, "Not really, but in this past year's competition, Buffalo Trace hit the world record like right before us, and they were all celebrating, but we were like the last team to go, and then we beat them." Exactly. So I guess like next year there might be some vengeance from those guys.
Exactly. I think some money changes hands and some betting. We'll see.
No, but I one of the reasons that really attracted me to the cigar industry is I really like the sense of community and these kind of traditions, and I think it's something that's shared probably even more so in the bourbon community, because cigars, it's several different countries. You know, you have American-based ones, but everything's grown in Nicaragua or Honduras or the DR or Cuba or Costa Rica. We still have a sense of this community in this industry, but bourbon, it's like everyone is here. Like everyone is within 20 miles.
It's awesome. It's incredible. And I think there's no better representation than this vintage library, right? And it's that balance of being a new company, but understanding where you came from, balancing the history and tradition with innovation.
Exactly.
And, you know, it's why we came to Bardstown.
Exactly. That's a problem sometimes in the industry is, you know, you have some of these blenders who are, you know, these very old, like super, in our industry, super famous, well-respected, but they never like wrote their process down. It's just like, they can just smell a thing, it needs another 3 weeks. Exactly. So the next generation now, like all those guys' sons are having to like kind of develop out these technical processes. Like it needs to sit here for this long. But before, and I'm sure it was the same in bourbon, there was a guy who can just kind of just look into a barrel and be like, nah, it needs another year and a half, or it needs another 6 weeks.
Right.
So it's cool to see that transition to a more modern era. Once it's barreled and then it's put into your many warehouses here, how long typically does it sit? Do some sit for longer? Do you have like a baseline?
Yeah, I always talk about aging bourbon as a seesaw, right? And it starts completely out of balance. Distillate, it smells like grain and it smells like light fruit, right? So you have those two things. The barrel brings caramel, vanilla, baking spice. So every year that comes by, what you're getting is a balance. The seesaw comes into balance as caramel, vanilla, baking spice come up, and they balance the kind of grain and fruit. To me, that really hits its balance 6 years.
Okay, so that's what we were told yesterday. Yeah. 6 years is kind of the minimum.
You hit it. And then the seesaw starts going. You get to 8, 10 years, you get these rich barrel characteristics. In bourbon, if you start getting to 18, 20 years, the barrel really dominates and you lose some of the nuance.
So that's another big thing with cigars when it comes to the aging. If you have, if you age a cigar properly, you can have a cigar that's 100 years, similar to some of these bourbons that I want to talk about in here later because this room is really cool. But what happens is, especially with tobacco that's supposed to have a little more characteristic to it, a little stronger flavor, a little stronger nicotine content, after the 6, 7, 8 year mark, it starts to kind of fall off the other end where it'll smoke great and it'll be very smooth, but the elements that kind of are going to make it stand out start to dissipate. So if I take a full-bodied cigar and smoke it right now, and then I age it properly and smoke it in 20 years, it'll be smokable, it'll be smooth, it'll be clean. It won't have almost any of the flavor that I had on that original one. So when people use these kind of very aged tobaccos, like the Montecristo M has some 20-year tobacco in it, that's kind of to help balance out the stronger characteristics of these other one, give you a very smooth, very well burning, very clean, and it still adds some flavor to it, but it helps balance out everything else. If the entire cigar was aged 20 years, again, it would be smooth and crisp and great for the morning. A lot of what made it special, though, would be gone. So I imagine if you're aging a bourbon for 25 years, there's still going to be a group of people who enjoy that, and it's going to be delicious, but it's not hitting that center mark like you wanted it to.
Yeah, and it all varies by barrel, by bourbon. I've had a 27-year bourbon that was incredible, right? And it's just the nuance. In general, there's a sweet spot between grain and barrel, and it's usually younger than people think.
Oh, yeah, I can definitely imagine that. So 6 years, and then what I really found interesting is, when we're aging tobacco, temperature and humidity are very important and have to be meticulously maintained. 70% humidity, no more than 72, 73 degrees, for however many years we're aging tobacco. For you guys, temperature plays a role, but kind of in the opposite way, where the more volatility, you want that, it gives it more characteristic.
It's really why this part of the country is perfect for aging bourbon, because we have brutally hot summers and brutally cold winters, right? And so you want the swings for your barrel development. When it gets really cold, everything tightens up. The barrel contracts, the liquid contracts, right? And you're out of the staves. Then as it gets hot, everything expands. The liquid goes in and is able to interact with the wood. And as time goes by, you get the in and out, that natural development. Same thing is true by floor, right?
Right.
They're not one-story rick houses. If you're 7 stories, you could have a 30-degree difference, top to bottom. More development on the higher floors.
So do you guys purposely put certain things on higher floors, or are you, swapping things out? We're going to bring this one down for 6 months. How does that work?
Yeah, so for large-scale projects, what you want is your barrels stored in different locations. You don't want to be all on a low floor, all on a high floor. So say you're taking 400 total barrels. You want to be pulling them from different areas so you're getting different characteristics, blending them all together to make your final product.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
That's very interesting.
Yeah.
Are there times where it's is there ever a danger of it being too hot? We had a week of 102 degrees, it was almost too much, or it's no, the more extreme kind of the better?
Yes, it's interesting. It's a great question, and especially we have these all glass warehouses, and then you're really getting day-to-day shifts, right? And if it gets too hot, to your point, we'll go check in on those barrels on the high floors, and they can get the danger. They develop quicker, but they evaporate quicker, so you're losing it. And the flavor can get a little harsh, right? So what you want to do is identify that and just know, okay, I want that, aggressive flavor as part of this blend with softer flavors. Or if you're targeting a singular profile, Just know what you've got and
Right.
put it in a release that makes sense for it.
That's very interesting. Very interesting. So as head of kind of product development, are you in charge of the actual projects? All right, I want to do a bourbon like this, or I want to do a collaboration like this, or I want to do a blend like this. It's kind of that's kind of your role. So
That's my role. Is
that's the
projects
most
and blending.
fun role I can imagine.
For this company is amazing, and that we have the resources and size to do really cool things, but we're still this really tiny team.
Yeah.
And that makes us really agile. So it's things like the Notre Dame finish, or we did the first American whiskey finished in Indian whiskey barrels. We've just done
really
all these cool creative projects, and we do them quickly. And this one is no exception to that.
Yeah, I mean, well, this one, like your bourbon, this one took us a couple years to kind of get together, but the finished product is going to make it all the better. Before we even talk about the cigar, so this is the bourbon that we based the project off of. This is your Origin series. So again, I'm still new to learning your entire portfolio. I know you have the Discovery series. I know you have a lot of collaborations. Would you say Origin series is like your, I don't want to say standard, but like your flagship?
Flagship, absolutely. Right. And Origin, why it has that name, is it's 100% estate distilled. Okay. So we started in 2016. We couldn't come out of the gate with a bourbon, right? It was too young. We did, and continue to still do a lot of blending with older bourbon that we would go out and purchase. And we would write exactly, what each product was comprised of. We were waiting for our bourbon to come of age to release the Origin series. So this has a 6-year age statement. It's 100% estate distilled, aged, and bottled right here at our facility. This one is, you're always majority corn, so it's 60% corn. And then remember that fork in the road with either rye or wheat. This is rye, and it's rye forward. So it's a bourbon that's 60% corn, 36% rye. So strong rye content, 4% barley. So it's 96 proof, but it has this great, enveloped with the caramel and vanilla, this pop from the rye, which is really nice. So
now we can kind of get into the pairing aspect here with the cigar, because there's some misnomers and misconceptions about cigar and alcohol pairings, particularly like whiskey is obviously probably the biggest one. And that what I like to do, and what real aficionados I think prefer, is you don't necessarily want to match flavor for flavor. So if you have a bold, rich, sweet bourbon, you don't necessarily want a bold, rich, sweet cigar, because two very strong things, your palate's going to be all iffy. You're not going to be able to taste the nuances in either. So what you want is something that complements the bourbon in the right way, but then also has some kind of reverse flavors so you can kind of taste the distinction. So we definitely have some, this is 100% Nicaraguan, made at the Plasencia factory. The Plasencias are, whoever the most legendary family of bourbon is, it's the Plasencias. They've been around for over 100 years. At least two factories, one in Honduras, one in Nicaragua. They're known for their tobacco. It's only actually very recently, like 2016, they came out with like their big name brands, the Plasencia Alma Fuerte and the Alma Fuego, that are winning all these awards and everything. But before that, they were known for making cigars for some of the other biggest names in the industry. But they are the legends of tobacco. And so what we did with this blend, and we have like a master blender who works for our company named Rafael Nadal, who did a great job working with Plasencia on this. 100% Nicaraguan, and then we kind of explained to them, here's the kind of flavor of the whiskey, but again, we don't want to match it flavor for flavor. We want something where you're going to be able to taste a little more of the spice on this, because this one's a little bit more mellow in certain spots. So here you're going to get some great spice, but you're also going to get some great natural tobacco sweetness, and you're going to get a little bit of like a citrusy note as well. Cool. I smoked this last night, and I think this is what Brandon, I think he wanted to give us the bottle and bond, but I think we ended up drinking this one. It went so well together. Because also they're both not overly strong, which is not something you want. You don't want two items to be overly strong, and nor do you want one to be stronger than the other. It's really, you want a nice middle ground for both. So you're tasting every aspect. You're tasting the nuance. You're tasting the start. When it hits your tongue, you're tasting the finish of it. Same thing with the cigar. You want to taste every puff is going to deliver something a little different. And you want to be able to taste those nuances. You want to be able to taste the transition from like, oh, it was sweet, and oh, now it's getting a little like cinnamon or a little zest in there. The pairing of these two, I think, is one of the best I've ever had. So like we are so incredibly excited about this. And as I pointed out to you before, I just want to show the people out there, and I'm sure Chris will get some great B-roll. You guys have a very unique bottle if you want to show it off there.
Yeah.
This nice square bottle with these, kind of rounded out corners. And that's what we did with the cigar as well. We did a soft oval box press. So if you look at it kind of from that angle, you see It also has these kind of rounded corners on it. So this is, and that's why we called it the perfect pairing. Again, it's not just, we didn't age it in the bourbon barrels. That's something we might want to do in the future, now that I know you guys sell barrels. Because we didn't want it to just taste exactly like the bourbon.
Right.
We wanted it to match up well. Think of it like a couple. Sometimes couples who like all of the exact same things don't really get along. You need a little bit of variation in there.
I think about it, you said it so well, and when I think about pairings and when we do them, I think pairings, they either complement, they contrast, but ideally they use both of those roles to elevate. Right?
Exactly.
And they elevate one another.
Exactly. Because smoking the cigar, it's going to bring out something in the bourbon maybe you didn't try before. Drinking this bourbon with the cigar, you're going to maybe taste something in the cigar that if you were drinking it with a beer, you wouldn't have noticed before. You didn't pick up on before. So tell us about so you have, this is the original Origin series, but you have 3 or 4 lines in the Origin. Can you tell us about that portfolio and what kind of differentiates them?
This one has the high rye bourbon, right? The bottle and bond is if you took the other fork in the road and you used wheat. So it's 68 corn, 20% wheat. Easiest way to remember it, wheat is sweet, rye is dry. So the wheat is smooth, soft, easy liftoff. Then we have a rye, a true rye. So the difference between bourbon and rye, they're both whiskeys under the umbrella of grain-based spirits. Bourbon is majority corn, rye is majority rye.
Makes sense.
And then that rye has a really cool double barreling, which meant it went into 2 barrels.
Okay.
Second one being cherry wood. So if you want a cherry forward rye, this is the one for you.
Are there any rules with rye like bourbon, like it has to be aged in a certain barrel, or as long as it's a majority rye, you can kind of...
The same rules apply, right? So New Chart American Oak, the proof off the still into the barrel, all of that applies. You're just substituting your primary grain.
Oh, wow. Very interesting.
Yeah.
What would you say is your most unique project?
Oh, I've got a lot. That's what
Please. We're here for the bourbon stories, man.
Well, this one we just came out with, I think, is the coolest one. It's called the Cathedral.
Yeah, I heard a little bit about it yesterday, but please tell us all.
Yeah, so Notre Dame, when it caught fire, the French government went on a mission to find the best oak trees in France to repair Notre Dame. Right. So they went out and they analyzed all these lots, and they found one in the Bercé Forest. It's in the Loire Valley, where all the Sauvignon Blanc comes from, right? And they identified these 300-year-old French oak trees that were just incredible, and they selected those to repair the cathedral. There was a little bit left over, and we worked with a great cooperage over there to turn them into barrels.
Oh, wow.
And I made a custom blend to go in there, aged 12 to 19 years. This is what we talked about with the seesaw, right?
Yeah.
Now you've got older bourbon, you're going to double barrel it, so you've got to be really gentle with it. So we kept it on the first floor. Slow development. French oak has a tighter grain, more tannin, more grit, but you got to be very careful it doesn't overpower it. Find that balance. It aged for 14 months on the first floor, and then we bottled it up as the cathedral finish.
That's
incredible.
Awesome. That's awesome. Do you guys... those aren't barrels that you're going to be selling off. I'm guessing you guys are keeping those for some kind of future. Like those are pretty.
We refilled them.
Yeah. I would say that's not something that we want to be selling to a beer manufacturer to do anything with.
There's just 6 of them.
Yeah. Where do you see the future place of Bardstown in the kind of bourbon whiskey community? I mean, obviously everyone, you kind of have your sights set on as high as you can go, but do you kind of like the realm where you're in now, where you're like very respected in the industry? Do you want to become like the biggest bourbon distributor? Like, what's kind of your guys' goal?
I've always seen Bardstown as we're explorers. And I think we're always going to be on the forefront of innovation and doing some unique projects. What will change in the coming years is our core origin, are the things that we distill here that are most representative of classic Kentucky, those are going to continue to age.
Right.
And we're going to get these magnificent 10, 12 year. We can start using those in blends. So I think that's what you'll see as a change in the company. We're constantly expanding our footprint. We're about to be in all 50 states.
Yes.
So I think we're going to grow. We're going to expand, but we will continue to be explorers.
I love that. And I, as you were explaining the Origin series, it kind of dawned on me. I'm like, yeah, their first bourbon wouldn't have really come out until 2022.
Yep.
Like the first one that you guys made here. I'm like, that's actually, Chris, we're like part of like history. We're like along for the ride with them on this.
Awesome.
Few more questions, and we're probably going to do a little more content in here. Tell us about first of all, if anyone is ever in Kentucky, you have to come here. It is the most elegant, most welcoming, like it's an attraction. It's not just like, oh yeah, we built like a little thing over here for tourists to come. This is built as, obviously, the distillery comes first. You want to make sure your product is good, but also like a gathering for the bourbon community. You want people to come here.
You nailed it. So when we opened, it was right after legislation that the Kentucky Distillers Association worked to pass, where previously you could only get a little sample, basically. Right. And what they worked to do is enable you to have a full-service bar, restaurant, at your distillery. It changed everything in Kentucky, because now every distillery is building these programs, and it was fortunate that we were building when the law passed. So we saw hospitality as an opportunity to build your brand, not an obligation. Right. And that's been a huge pivot. And so this place is just incredible, from the cocktail classes to the restaurant to this vintage library, as ways you can experience bourbon and learn about it. And it's just honestly a brand new thing in the industry.
It seems like it. And from what I've heard from my friends and colleagues who are bourbon aficionados, they were like, it's not like, obviously the drink itself is exceptional. He's like, but it's the experience. It's the Bardstown experience. And I know that one of our big bosses, when we were kind of signing off on this project, he was like, oh, I want to go see these guys and talk to them. And they, he's from Florida, originally from Spain. They brought him down here. He did a tour and was wowed. He was awesome. Like, these are the guys. Like, I want to be involved with these guys, which is, it kind of helped push this project along. This vintage room. Yeah. We were hanging out in here yesterday. This is kind of where we put our stuff down. And then Jake was telling us, I'm like, oh, this is like a nice collection. And then he was getting into the history of some of these. Because, like, obviously you have your guys have the, the back wall there. And then I saw some that I recognized, like Stag and Blanton's and such. But there are some incredibly rare bourbons in here. Can you pick out like a couple that are special? Sure. We'll do a zoom in on them later, but pick out some of your favorites or like the most unique.
Yeah, so this room dates back to 1892. Wow. All right, so you got about 400 bottles, and the coolest ones are honestly right behind me here. These are all pre-prohibition or prohibition releases.
Wow. Like bathtub hooch? Like, is that what they were doing?
I'll grab this one. This one's my favorite. So this is from right here in Nelson County, right? So, and just the labels and marketing in these is just incredible to look at. But the thing that stands out here, 15-year bourbon, if you flip it over, it has the prescription, because during Prohibition, you needed the medicinal license. So this is for a tablespoon every 3 hours. So I don't know if that'd get the job done, but distilled in the spring of 1913, released spring of 1928 during Prohibition. Wow. With the prescription on the back.
If I may, I'll be very careful. It's from Jones Apothecary, and it says nothing but prescriptions. So they were really like, oh, we're all about health. This is awesome. So if you were to drink this, like, and obviously I know you guys sell these kind of, you sell pours of these things, and obviously how bourbon is being made is different, but what would be the big flavor differences in something like this versus even your standard bourbon of today?
It's a great question. So first off, if you're at 100 years old, even though it's a spirit, right, and it's robust and it can stand up to a lot of development, it's going to oxidize a little bit. So that oxidation will come through in the flavor. If it's gentle oxidation, to me it is wonderful. It pulls out. It can go too far and you start to get these kind of cardboard notes. You can see here with all of these, the caps we replace.
Yes, because the corks would dry out.
The corks, they weren't thinking it was going to last 100 years, right? So we replace the cork. Every time you open it, you get a can of argon gas, which you can get at any store, right? And it's a heavy gas and displaces the oxygen. Then you reseal it, right?
Okay.
And that's really key to, especially with a low fill line.
Yeah,
like
you have
this.
a lot of air in there. Right.
Once you start getting down here, you kind of just want to finish it.
Right,
Because
exactly.
it's going to over-oxidize. So that's what I would notice right away with a 100-year-old. You're also, back then, wood was a little older. Certainly changed the flavor profile. I think about bourbon in the 60s, 70s. Right now, there's all kinds of premium releases, right? And your bourbon gets siphoned off in different directions. 1970s, 80s, maybe they had a lot of it. Yeah. They just throw it all in there, right?
Exactly.
And so you would get, say it had a 10-year age statement, maybe there was 20-year bourbon in there.
Oh, wow.
That's a big difference.
So I, as an Italian from New Jersey, make wine with my family every year, generally, since I was a little kid. And one of the things, at least I was taught about wine, is that it'll age and it'll change in the barrel, but kind of like once you bottle it, like that's, except for the oxidation, but like that's kind of what you're getting. Mm-hmm. Is whiskey the same? If I age it for 3 years and then bottle it, and then 100 years later, it's not really 100-year aged bourbon, correct?
Correct. It's not going to be 100 years like barrel development.
Right.
But even with a tight seal, there's a little bit of oxidation. And call it 20 years, 30 years, you're really going to be able to taste it a little bit.
That's really interesting.
It also matters where it's stored.
Yeah, that's
true. You
true.
don't want to store it in your front window where the sun is hitting.
Exactly.
That'll damage
exactly.
it. Mm-hmm.
What would this, if we were to order one, what would this cost for like an ounce?
Okay, so the most expensive one in here is $3,000 an ounce. This is more like $50 an ounce.
All right, that's not bad.
Yeah.
That's not bad. So 3,000. I had to guess.
So you were correct, sir. Top left, and it's those the gold wax. That is right when the brand was being kind of revitalized. So it's 1974 distilled, coming out in the 90s. That's some of the best liquid out there, and just incredibly rare.
So for people who can't see, I did point to the
Van Winkles.
That's not the Rip Van Winkle. That's just the.
So
the
it's interesting as the name changes and you call out the Pappy. Those are 16-year Van Winkle Family Reserve.
Right.
But yeah, that was right when it was coming back. Oddly enough, it was at bourbon's low point, where those are Japanese exports. If you flip around the bottle,
oh really?
They were all being sent over to Japan because that's where the demand was.
I've heard, I was able to buy a bottle maybe 7 years ago of whatever the lowest tiered, I think it was the Rip Van Winkle, maybe it was a 10-year-old. Sure. I think me and my friends were able to split it for I think three of us put in like $70 and we were able to buy a bottle.
Yeah.
But I heard that there's just so much mystery behind that brand and it's limited quantities. I'm going to ask you, and I know that they're competitors, but would you say it's worth the hype? And be 100% honest.
No, I think there are bottles from vintage time periods, 70s, 80s, 60s that are absolutely magnificent and some of the most incredible liquid. Our master distiller, when he was the distiller at Maker's Mark, he has some bottlings in the early 90s that are just incredible. And I think those are worth the hunt. Modern day, I would absolutely.
Well, you kind of had this bourbon boom of late, maybe the past 10, 15 years ish. When I was in my bourbon days, I would mostly do. Chris, I forgot the name of it again. What the heck was I drinking? Basil Hayden.
Okay,
Basil Hayden, and then if I was feeling fancy, I would, for $100, I would get a bottle of Blanton's. Then this kind of bourbon boom hits. John Wick comes out. That's what he's drinking. In North Jersey, can't find a bottle of Blanton's anywhere. Right. So it's very interesting. But what I like about the bourbon and also the beer industry is that they've had these kind of big changes the last 10, 20 years and this explosion in popularity. But it's not necessarily just a boom. It's been sustainable. Mm-hmm. The bourbon boom, as some would call it, has been going on for quite some time. It doesn't seem to be slowing down. Would that be correct?
Yeah, I think bourbon, it's amazing because lately it's been driven by online groups.
Right.
Facebook groups, bourbon clubs. That's where I'm seeing so much interest, and the community in general, to me, is just incredibly welcoming. Right? It's open. It's how do you drink it? Every club I go and speak with or taste with, they're excited about the category, and I see that and the online presence of bourbon just driving it. And there's so much opportunity globally with bourbon, right? Compared to Scotch. If we just jump in a little bit of that lane, there's not enough bourbon aging.
Right, exactly. And Scotch, has this kind of, I like this kind of modern rivalry between like Japan and Scotland, and I know they're technically not called Scotch, but I do like that bourbon is kind of its own thing. There's internal competition, but we're not. I don't necessarily know, but I don't think you guys are competing with like a lot of does Japan do like a bourbon style?
Somewhat, you'll see it, but certainly their history tradition is all Scottish whiskey. And barley, just the profile.
Exactly. I have just one more thing because before we finish up here. What are some like of the big do's and don'ts when it comes to drinking bourbon? Like, do you need to have it neat on the rocks? What's too good of a bourbon to put into a cocktail kind of thing?
Yeah, that's great. So I always say have bourbon the way you enjoy it, right? There's plenty of people around here that bourbon and Mountain Dew is their go-to, right? So I'm not.
Chris's eyes perked up on that one.
It's delicious. You'd be fine. So sometimes I'll do a rock. Sometimes I'll go neat. I always argue, especially if it's an old-fashioned, which is minimal ingredients, where you just have your sugar and bitters and your bourbon. It's immensely important what bourbon you put into there. I depending on the cocktail, if it really features the spirit, I think you need a great bourbon to go in there. I would say my do's and don'ts, drink a variety, right?
Yeah.
You can try different bottles, different flavors to find out what you like, and I would never let someone tell you what it tastes like.
I love that. We treat the cigar industry in a very similar way. I've done thousands of cigar reviews and all of this, and I'll say like there's no such thing as a bad cigar. There's a cigar. There's a better cigar for you, but everyone likes something different, so really try to embrace it all. Is there a certain style of bourbon that you would prefer to put are there certain ones that's like, hey, you really should put an ice cube in this to kind of,
Yeah, so I think you look right there on the alcohol and the proof, right? And if you're seeing something, say it says 120 on there, know that that's going to have some heat on it. And heat, it varies by how much sweetness is there and other flavor to counteract it. If the bourbon just tastes a little too hot, and the ethanol is obscuring the flavor, either do a few drops of water. If you don't want to change the temperature, a few drops of water, or do an ice cube. The reason, just know an ice cube, it's going to water quickly.
Exactly.
It's okay to also take out the ice cube. Drops of water, you're more in control.
Okay, that's I've never actually seen that, but that makes a lot more sense. It's very interesting. Well, Dan, thank you so very, very much for this. This has been eye-opening and one of my favorite interviews. You've been great.
Awesome.
Everyone out there, make sure to check out two things. One, especially that I know it's either coming to one of our stores or already in one of our stores, but Bardstown Bourbon is now all 50 states, so make sure to ask your local liquor store. If they don't have it yet, tell them to go get it. Tell them to call Dan, and he'll answer, and they'll send out a guy. But make sure to check out the upcoming release of the Montecristo Bardstown. Two tremendous brands coming together to make something truly special. It will be available on our website. Select liquor stores will have it, but more importantly, they will have it here at the Bardstown restaurant, bar, a hotel, casino, whatever else you guys are building here. So you're going to be able to actually taste the cigar in its home, like where it was, what it was made to do. So make sure to check that out. Thank you all very much for watching. Make sure to comment, like, and subscribe. And as always, keep it lit.